Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the Political Brown Kid here, back with another video. And today, once again, I want to talk about young men in crisis, but not just young men in crisis. I want to talk to you about why it seems as though there's no hope for young men in crisis. And once again, I have to point to the liberal racist. At least that's what I think he is. I'm not trying to say that I have definitive proof. That's just my speculation. But the toxic feminist racist, liberal feminist racist, Bill Maher. I've been telling people about Bill Maher for years. He's gotten progressively worse. And this episode of his show is actually going to prove it. On his panel, he has this show was filmed a couple of weeks ago, so I'm just getting around to doing it and getting around to talking to it, so it's probably already been out there. But he had a gentleman named Scott Galloway on his show, as well as a female named Annie Lowrey on his panel. And so Bill Maher brings up the conversation on the topic of young men in crisis. He runs down a lot of statistics about, how women are just besting men in all kind of socio-economic categories, as well as lifestyle categories, whether it be real estate, whether it be education, whether it be, the performance in schools, so forth, so professionally. And so when they talk to Scott Galloway provides a very interesting perspective. And so does Annie Lowrey, and so does Bill Maher. So I wanted to play these clips. Hopefully I get to keep these clips up. But I want to play these clips, and then I want to respond to various segments. So let's start off with the initial conversation that was brought up by Bill Maher, and then the response from Scott Lowry.
About the men in crisis problem, which I was reading some amazing statistics, knowing this is a pet subject of yours. And I feel like sometimes people in this country get caught in a paradigm that's just not happening anymore. And in their minds, I think men are still ahead. I know men are told often, you have all the advantages. Listen to this. In a few years, twice the number of college graduates will be women than men. Right. Twice. 70% of high school valedictorians are women. They're in 10 states, they're a grade level above the boys. In all 50 states, they're at least half a grade level above the boys. Listen, this just blew my mind. Single women, far more likely to own their own home than single men. Far less likely to commit suicide or be in prison. And almost twice as many are married under 30. 63% of women under 30 are married, only 34% of men. So, I don't know, do the liberals have the guts to, take the case of somebody who's kind of lagging behind if it's a male?
Well, the question is, should they pay for the sins of their father and their grandfather? Because a 19-year-old who doesn't have any prospects with just a college degree, without a college degree, who has an education system that's biased against them, boys are twice as likely to be suspended the exact same behavior as a girl, 5 times as likely if you're a black boy. You mentioned some statistics. If you're a man on Tinder, if you're in the bottom half of our average attractiveness, you have to swipe 200 times to get dates. You get confirmation you have no value. And we have to have an honest conversation. Mating dynamics are different for men and women. 75% of women say that economic viability is important, only 25% of men. Women mate socioeconomically horizontally and up, men horizontally and down. So the result is a lack of household formation. And essentially, there's nothing more dangerous than a lonely, broken young man. And we're producing too many of them. And finally, we're having a productive conversation because who wants more emotionally and economically viable young men? Women. Compassion is not a zero-sum game. Civil rights didn't hurt white people. Gay marriage didn't hurt heterosexual marriage. Nor is having empathy for the group that has fallen furthest, fastest, is that going to affect women? We're finally having a productive conversation. Advocating for men does not make you anti-women.
So, as you can see in the clip there, I thought that Scott Galloway did a very compassionate job in regards to talking about young men at least in America, so I can only point to America. I don't know what the context is. I don't know if this was international studies or the numbers that were presented. But first, before I talk about Scott Lowry, let me say I'll commend Bill Maher for bringing up the topic of young men in crisis. I'll commend him for that, for having that on his panel. He provided some statistics here, and I thought that Scott Galloway did a fantastic job in the response. As Scott Galloway said, it's not a zero-sum game to empathize with men in crisis. As he stated, the civil rights movement didn't hurt white people. I mean, some people, that's debatable, but overall, you can probably look at it. That still study is TBD. He said that the gay or LGBTQ rights didn't hurt, heterosexuals, and he provides this information. And if you look at it too, again, as they're trying to bring this up, and they're trying to say that, look, man, we have young men in crisis here. We need to do something about this problem, because who wants men? Women. Who wants women? Men. We both want and need each other. So why can't, if you see that men are currently in crisis, why can't you empathize with them before it's too late? And here's something similar why this is kind of important. Remember, why, if for some of you individuals who are that have enough awareness of whether you're old enough to remember this, because this was just relatively recent. When you look at the 2016 election and the rise of Donald Trump, you have to look at it. And I'm not here to debate Donald Trump and whether he was good or bad. We're not going to do that dissection in this video. But you have to look at this perspective. Donald Trump was a businessman, no political background. None whatsoever, really, besides being a donor to various campaigns. He ran against 16, 17 strong Republicans who had who are career politicians, who were politically savvy, who knew politics in and out. He beat out generals. He beat out politicians. He beat out politicians. We can name Ted Cruz. I think Jeb Bush at the time was the fan favorite. He beat Jeb Bush out. He beat Marco Rubio out. He beat out war generals. He beat out a lot of people just to become the nominee of the Republican Party. Then he beat out another darling in Hillary Clinton to get to the White House. And the one group that he addressed the issue of was young white men, or neglected white men in this country. And they came out in droves to vote for him. And then when things go wrong for the liberals, then they look back and they say, well, yeah, maybe we should have taken young white men and we shouldn't have abandoned them. This is the same thing that Scott Galloway's trying to say. He's saying that, look, you have a group of men who are not doing well. And why can't we empathize with them? So, Scott, you did a great job, but let's get into Annie Lowrey's comments on the subject.
I think that's absolutely true, and I think that there's probably some good policy answers here. So making school more available to and more keyed towards boys is definitely one answer. I also think that there's a cultural answer that's going to have to come into play here. So one of our great living economists, Claudia Golden of Harvard, has studied men and women in the labor market and has found that when women enter a profession, men leave. The profession becomes devalued. People within it make less money because the men don't want to be associated with the women there. It's called the pollutant theory of discrimination. Women are the pollutant in the eyes of men. And so I think that this is one way in which patriarchy is hurting men. And I completely agree with you that this isn't zero-sum, and it's a crisis. In terms of other cultural things, I think that the media that young men are consuming and what they are being told about themselves and what the world owes them is unbelievably, disgustingly toxic. I don't know how you combat Andrew Tate. I want to say this specifically about him. What he says is monstrous.
Andrew Tate.
Yeah.
Tell people who he is who may not know that name.
Okay, so that was Annie Lowrey. And once again, a conversation that turns into, or that should have been about advocating for young men, or the plight of young men and the concerns that we see going on in the community that's revolving around young men, turns into a feminist rant. It turns into feminist digs from Annie Lowrey, and Bill Maher chimes in. And then makes Scott Galloway shift his position on the subject matter. So here you have Annie Lowrey quoting Claudia Golden. I do not know Claudia Golden's background. I've not looked her. I've looked her up slightly, but I haven't done extensive research. But apparently she comes up with this pollutant theory of discrimination, or at least that's what Annie Lowrey says. I don't know if she's saying that Claudia Golden came up with this theory or whether she's just saying that that's what the theory is called. But apparently Claudia Golden did a study that basically states that when women enter into a profession, men leave and the value of the profession goes down. So basically Annie Lowrey's trying to say that, men have brought this on themselves, because then she says that this is how patriarchy has hurt men. So what does the dating dynamics and what does all of this have to do with patriarchy and with this conversation about women entering into a profession and men leaving? Bill Maher just cited various statistics that women are making more money than men, in that women date, of course, they date up, men date down. But what does women, if Bill Maher's giving statistics that women are making more money than men, women are becoming they own more homes statistically than men. Their education, they're getting higher GPAs than men. They're going to college at a higher rate than men. How does it work into the conversation, this pollutant theory of discrimination, where women enter into a profession and men leave, and then the value of the profession goes down? I'm just that's a pivot so that she can bring in toxic feminism, and just to kind of take a dig at men and not hold women accountable. And to be honest with you, it's not even necessarily that she has to hold women accountable in this conversation. All she has to do is come up with ideas to say, well, yeah, this is a concern that we need to address. But obviously her way of addressing the concern of the plight of men is to say that men have done this to themselves and they deserve everything that they're getting right now because they've done it to themselves. And I just don't get this conversation from her. Then she just goes on to say that men have been given toxic information from media. And I'm assuming she means social media. And then then she cites Andrew Tate. She pivots towards Andrew Tate just because I guess he's been locked up now for quote unquote alleged sex trafficking. And of course, that's going to get everybody riled up. And then that's where Bill Maher chimes in. Bill Maher chimes in and says, yeah, he pivots and he takes the side of her. So let's listen to what Bill Maher has to say. See, this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying about Bill Maher. Bill Maher I can understand why a woman would take the digs at men that they do, because this is just so common in today's society where they're just going to take a dig at men for any and everything. So I can understand that. She really can't empathize with being a man. Bill Maher, you should be able to empathize.
Why are young men so lazy, though? That's what I don't understand. I mean, you see them You see them on dates in shorts. Yes, they are. Stuff like that. I mean, just like little things you could do. And they just seem to be, they would rather sit home and jerk off to porn. I don't get the inertia that seemed to be built into them.
I think a lot of it is our fault. I think that men who have achieved a certain level of success need the ultimate expression of masculinity, in my view, is to take a vested interest in the well-being of a young man or a boy who's not yours. Because the number one indicator of suicide among teen boys is a fatherless home. 70% of men who are incarcerated didn't have a male role model. So if we want better men, we have to be better men. We have to get involved in the you're talking about mating dynamics. I think in health, in high school, we should have a course on mating dynamics that teaches everyone, especially young men, how to approach someone and express romantic interest, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not toxic, while this is the hard part, while making them feel safe. They've been taught that it's toxic to express that interest. It's not.
Even if I wanted to help you with this, it's too risky.
And there you have it. There you have it from Bill Maher. I don't make this stuff up. Bill Maher, again, he's gotten progressively worse. And, for a person that should be able to empathize with being a man, because Bill Maher, I think that he is. I think that that's what he was born as, and I think that's what he is. I can understand this woman, Annie Lowrey, coming off with her feminism. I get it. She can't relate to being a man. It's a part of the female culture to just male bash now. It's just the feminism, the rise of feminism and the rise of power. They want it. So, I'm not trying to say I agree with it. I think she is just really watching this. It really hits an emotion with me, and not in a good way, from listening to her talk. And then you have to sit up here and, I have to kind of bite my tongue and mince my words. Well, I'm not biting my tongue or mincing my words, but I know a lot of women, they're going to watch this and they're going to be triggered because I'm mad at a woman. But I don't care if you're mad or not. She deserves just as much criticism as everybody else. If you want to be a feminism, you can take it. But I know she can't empathize with being a man. So, but Bill Maher, you should be able to empathize. And here you come. The conversation starts off from Bill Maher presenting facts. He gave statistical facts about men. But I guess maybe he was using those statistics to kind of beat up on men. Because then he says, why are young men so lazy? As if it's young men's fault. I mean, I guess you can look at it maybe from the school aspect, from the academic aspect, and maybe that is the case. But maybe there are other things going on. Maybe you have to find the root cause of why young men are feeling the way that they're feeling. Maybe that there's a hopelessness that's there. Everyone wants to talk about mental health. That's the buzzword in 2000. At least it's been the buzzword since 2010. Or since 2000s, all of these shootings, this whole word of mental health has come up. I guess since when you found out a lot of white people started shooting up schools, when black people were doing it, it was just, well, we weren't shooting up schools, period. But when black people were doing a lot of gun-related crimes or violent crimes, it was just they're predicate felons and they're super predators, as the Clintons had said. But once white people started having all of these mass problems, in schools, then it became about mental health. So since we're all on this mental health kick, why aren't people saying, well, what's the root cause for why young men are doing so bad? Is there treatment that they're getting in society? Maybe is it treatment that they're getting from the opposite sex? Maybe do they feel hopeless? Why aren't people digging further into the root cause of why they are the way they are? But instead, Bill Maher comes up with this. He just starts hypothesizing. Why are young men so lazy? And now he's pivoting everybody to agree with that premise. Because even if you listen, Scott Galloway agrees. He pivots. Scott Galloway started off so passionately advocating for men, but after Annie Lowrey and Bill Maher start talking, his talking points pivot. So Bill Maher, why are young men so lazy? They go on dates in shorts. Okay, maybe it's summertime. What kind of shorts are they wearing? What date is this? Well, what do the young women wear? Are they dressing up in nightgowns and evening gowns? Are they going to the Kennedy Center or the opera? I don't know what they're doing. But as soon as someone like Kevin Samuels says, why are young women going out in public wearing bonnets? That's a problem. But young men wearing shorts is obviously a problem as well. He said the little things that they can do. Well, what are the little things, Bill Maher? So now he's taking little slight digs and basically saying, if a man is making these drastic improvements, well, he didn't make these micro improvements. There's still some small things that he needs to work on. So no matter what this man does, Bill Maher's going to find something to pick apart males and their deficiencies as human beings. Then he says they'd rather sit at home and I'm not even going to say the rest of it, but it has to do with pleasuring oneself. They'd rather sit at home and do that. He doesn't know that. These are all hypotheticals. These are all suppositions that's coming from Bill Maher's mind because he can't relate with young men in their inability to get a female. They suffer from inertia. If you don't know what inertia is, it's just a tendency to do nothing or to remain unchanged. That's directly from the dictionary. I had to pull that one up. That's directly from the dictionary. Inertia. It's just really the act of just being still, doing nothing. But I just wanted to get you the full definition. So this is what Bill Maher's response is. And Annie Lowrey. So a conversation that should have been about advocating and helping out men turns totally wrong. And then now you have Scott Galloway. Again, like I said, he pivots. He said that there should be a high school course on dating dynamics. I agree with this comment. I honestly do. There should be. I mean, remember back in the day, you had, I guess, what were those? You had the Jack and Jills. You had those, young clubs for young adults, for young people coming of age, and they join Jack and Jill, or they join, I forget what the boys thing, or maybe that was both the boys thing. I don't know. But there were etiquette type stuff being done. And maybe you do need to have that in school. I mean, they teach you, money management in school. They teach you supposedly about, the way, about bureaucracy and how, politics works. So they should teach you some domestic skills. They teach you can take a class on cooking. Why can't you have a class on dating dynamics? So I do agree with this. But then Scott Galloway says, especially young men. Why especially young men? And then he says, especially young men, on how to approach someone. But then he also did say how to approach someone and how to feel safe and how to do this. But, then it becomes a how to approach someone. Yeah, but what about young women? How to make good choices in choosing men? What are their roles in the dating process? What are their roles? I mean, is he going to talk about those roles, or what the responsibilities of a woman or a young girl should be in the dating process? They don't hit on that. But they'll talk about all of the young men and the deficiencies of young men, and they don't talk about the deficiencies of women. You have to understand, when you're dealing with a young boy, because even as a grown adult, I struggle to figure out, like, okay, how do these women want to be approached? What kind of woman am I dealing with? Because you're running across various types of women. You have some of these women, if you go online and you go on dating websites, some of these women say, I'm a traditional woman and I want a man's man. And they'll put man in all caps, like you're supposed to be Superman. I'm like, okay, damn it. Obviously they're emphasizing a man, so what kind of man? And I want a man who's a leader and who's a traditional alpha man. You get some of those women that are posting that, and then you have some women, then, if you come across a particular way, then some women don't want a traditional man. They want a modern man that accepts her for being, being an independent woman and a modern woman. So these young guys, I can probably relate or even imagine what they're going through in the dating scene. They're confused. What do I do and how do I do it? What type of woman is she? Is she a modern independent woman, or does she want a man who's going to be a leader and do X, Y, and Z? Honestly, I'm being serious. I've been on dates before where a woman told me, no, you walk in front of me. She wanted to walk behind me. She wanted me to do the ordering on the menu. She wanted me to do, and it was just kind of like, wow, I'm kind of got to get used to it, because then I have certain other women, they want to walk beside you and they want to do certain things. It is hard out here on the dating scene. You're trying to figure out and navigate what woman that you're actually dating. So this is just, again, my Bill Maher thing, because Bill Maher, like I said, I don't watch his show. I come in to watch bits and pieces just to see what the topic is about. Because, again, I like to expose him and talk about him, because I think the guy is just a horrible, horrible person. I honestly do. I think that he is the epitome of white liberalism, where these liberals think that they're so liberal and they're so progressive. We accept everyone and we love everyone. But as soon as a black person wants reparations, then they're like, can't do that for you. We believe in everything but reparations. Don't want to do it for you. And they're so comfortable with you that they can talk about why you're deficient, what's wrong with black people. And they can take shots at, black related issues. Bill Maher's one. And as you can see, for those who pay attention to YouTube, Just Pearly Things is another. It's called Getting Too Comfortable with Black People. And these are what you would also call liberal racists. They're liberal racists. They're liberal until they see you wanting to get ahead, until they can't get their fingers in the pot. The only time white people will approve reparations is when every black person is dating a white person and white people can get their hands in that reparations pot. I can guarantee you that. So once again, I'm going to end this. This video is probably far too long than what I wanted to make it. All of my videos tend to be. Can't keep them below 10 minutes. I would love to. But that is just my thought on, once again, the toxic liberal Bill Maher. And of course, he has his good friend Annie Lowrey on the show. And Scott Galloway, you did a decent job. And then it went off the rails for you a little bit. But at least you held it down for as long as you could. This is the Political Brown Kid. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Also leave comments. Thank you.